maybe.
There's 3 of us.
No, you're good. We're good.
Okay.
I just need to rearrange these names again. I think we're finally made it, guys.
Welcome, everybody.
We're
All
not,
of us are here.
we're not on Twitch, but oh well, that'll have to happen next time.
YouTube, Facebook, we're making progress.
Yes.
We'll end Discord.
We are.
Whoever wants to come in our video chat area and be like, what up, party?
Oh my gosh. Okay. We're here now. Closing all these other windows. Okay, anyway. Let's start with our introductions. Because that was chaotic. Diana as our guest. Please go first.
I go first?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Royal Goldfish. My actual name is Diana. Let's see. I've been in the Arizona cosplay community for a really long time. Over 15 years. So I've kind of watched cosplay change a lot over the past decade as it went from being like something you hid and didn't tell anybody to something that's like mainstream kind of now. So it's interesting. But so over that time I've done, of course, lots of cosplaying. So I generally make my own costumes. I've done a lot of competing, and just about 2 years ago I opened up my own business doing commissions, and yeah, so it's been super fun because I get to like make costumes that I would normally never make for myself, and that's kind of awesome. And I still am doing stuff for myself too. It's just not as much, but that's okay.
Nice. And Sam?
Sam of ThermoCosplay, if you don't know me by now. Crazy. Okay, so yeah, Sam of ThermoCosplay, and I've been cosplaying for 6 years now. Whoa, that's too much.
No, I think 6 years. Yeah, 2014. It's when you started, right?
Yeah. That's the first time I ever wore a costume.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Well, I mean, other than Halloween as a kid, but you know.
Right, because that's where we all started. It's Halloween as a kid.
Sure.
Everybody's intro, and then you go crazy and you're like, I'm going to make them now.
Right? Like, what was our problem? What was going through our minds? So, I don't know. Okay, hi, everybody. My name is Jinx Cosplay. Also, Jessica is my real name. And I've been cosplaying for a very long time as well, since 2001. I actually didn't cosplay a lot in Arizona until recently. I went to California mostly doing all my cosplay. So me and my mom used to make our costumes, and that's where I learned to make my costumes. So I do also make a lot of my own costumes. And I don't really like competing, but Sam always drags me into competitions. So yes, I do compete, mostly with her. So that's usually when I'm competing. If I'm competing by myself, it was an accident. Or some sort of random happening. But yeah, that's me. So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this really crazy ride again. I know we've done this 5 times now, but we still are not really sure what we're doing. But it's okay. It's all a learning process.
We just don't have all the special programs and affiliate sections and all that stuff because we're still too new to get all these integrations. Like, we can integrate, but only if you have this qualification, which you can't get for like 6 months.
Right. Yes, exactly. So we'll just have to figure it out as we go. But, oh, Sam, did you send an agenda? Do you have an agenda today?
I have stuff I'm going to talk about, yeah.
Okay, did you send it to us?
I just said we're talking about sewing tools.
Oh, okay.
So we have to go through the tools and mechanics, and then we can get into techniques if that's not enough to cover. But I feel like there's a lot of sewing tools.
Yeah, for sure.
Some that people are like, what's that? Well, this magical thing.
A lot of things, yeah.
All right, so if you haven't already heard, we're talking about sewing tools and materials, and we decided to bring in Royal Goldfish because she is like a sewing master. She's first level, excellent. Like, you know, if you guys watch BNHA or My Hero Academia, whatever you want to call it, she's All Might of sewing. So.
I feel like I'm a very fast seamstress, and I know that's because of practice. but because I'm fast, then I end up doing like way more. So I think my experience just keeps growing and growing because as I get faster, I'm still doing just as much sewing as I used to do. And now I do it for like a living. So I mean, I literally sew several hours every day. So
Wow.
it's like a lot. Yeah, so and I don't hate it yet.
That's good.
Yeah, it's a good sign. Yeah.
That's always good.
Bad.
It sucks when something that you love and you try, to make it into a living and then you start hating it. Like that's what I worry about sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I don't know if I'll ever go into commissions, but that's something that I always think about when starting commissions. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I mean slightly off topic, but like when I went into it, I went into it knowing that I wasn't going to compromise what I wanted. And I was in a place like financially and where I could do that. So I wouldn't recommend anyone do it. Like if you're starving and you need money and you need to compromise a lot, like that's not when you start doing commissions, because that's
Yeah.
when you start letting people take advantage of you and not charging enough and doing all that bad stuff.
So we're gonna talk about since this is your business. A part of sewing tools would be like in commissions. Like how do you manage your sewing commissions? Like what do you do before you accept a sewing commission? What do you consider?
So there's lots of things that I consider. A lot of times it's sometimes if someone asks me about something, I'll immediately ask them their time frame and their budget. Because either of those things will make or break something. If someone wants something done in 2 weeks, that's generally never going to happen because I already am doing commissions for someone else. So like 2 weeks from now. And if you want something done in 2 weeks, be prepared to pay like a ridiculous amount of money to rush that order. But usually I won't even do it because I feel like that isn't fair to my other clients, like
Yeah.
trying to push stuff on top of it. And then the other thing is budget. Sometimes I'll get people with like really grandiose requests, but their budget's like $100.
Oh,
And
that's probably
so
the most
then
common.
yeah, it's not as common as you think,
Oh,
actually.
okay.
Yeah, I've only had a couple people where they give me like really crazy, crazy over the top costumes and they think that the budget's only like $100 or $200. It's only happened a couple of times. Sometimes people are surprised, but then we talk about, oh, you can make payments and you can do that. And then they're much more like, oh, okay. Because sometimes people think that you have to make all of the, like, pay all at once. And I mean, like, for me, that's difficult for me to do as a person. So I don't expect other people to be able to do it. So what I then do is I do a quote for them, which is they send me reference pictures and their general measurement size. And then I kind of do some research and figure out what kind of methods I would use, what kind of materials I would use, and then kind of gauge myself on how much that would cost. So like if I'm going to need to use this material, how much am I going to need? And let's look around and see the average of what that would cost. And then I type all that up and I send it to my client so they can see exactly how much everything costs. The only thing I don't do is I put my labor cost in as just like a solid amount. I don't break that down at all. But it does show them how much materials cost and then how much labor costs. And so it kind of gives them a better idea of how that's broken down. Because sometimes people don't realize how much materials cost.
No.
And then after that, I always do 30% deposit. So they have to pay the 30% deposit before I'll actually start working on it. Because generally 30% covers the materials. And then I can get those materials and then I can work on it. So that's generally how I do it. And honestly, once they make the deposit, I'll work with someone however they need to make payments. I have clients that have been making $25 a month payments for like almost a year.
Wow,
Which is
nice.
fine. I mean, like, whenever they're ready, then they can get it. But it depends. Some people don't do that. But I'm also very communicative, I guess. I don't know how other commissioners communicate with people, but I always send pictures of materials once I've gotten them. I send progress pictures while I'm working on it. The only other thing is, like, usually I'm working on something for about 2 weeks, maybe longer if it's a bigger thing. Like I said, I'm kind of fast, and I have all day. So if you think about it, like you're at work doing a project, I can work on my projects for like 8 hours a day if I want. So working on something for 2 weeks is a pretty long stretch of hours that I can be doing. But a lot of times their due date isn't until like, they don't need it until like November. Well, I'm not going to start working on it immediately because I need to finish the other stuff in front of it. So a lot of times people want like updates, but I'm not really doing anything that I could take pictures of for them yet. But
How do they usually respond to that? Because I totally understand, you know, what you mean, but obviously the average person, say they're not like, you know, a seasoned cosplayer or seamstress, they don't really think about that.
Yeah.
So what kind of reactions do you get when you say that?
It's interesting. A lot of times I just tell people that I have their patterns like started out, and that's not really something that I can send them pictures of. And generally they're fine with it. And I say like, but don't worry, you know, I'll get started around this time. And if they're worried about it, then I can tell them like my time frame and things like that on how it works. I think sometimes if I send them like previous things I've made and been like, oh, this was like this many week project, then they're usually fine. I haven't had anybody be like super freaked out about it. I have had people be overly communicative to me, which is like checking in like almost every day
Oh my
on
gosh.
stuff, which can be like kind of frustrating. And you know, it's not like they're being mean or anything. It's just like they're just inquisitive, but it's like I'm not making that much progress every day to show them like a significant difference between the previous day. So like sometimes we have to have a little chat where I'm like, hey, let me just work on it and I'll get back to you when when there's something to show you.
I actually had another question. So you mentioned a while back about how you charge for commissions, and I heard something really interesting that you said that you charge your labor in like one chunk, like one price. So you don't charge it by the hour. Like this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, like starting commissions. How did you decide on that?
So I do charge by the hour.
Oh, okay.
But I don't put that in my quote.
Oh, okay.
I charge between $25 to $50 an hour.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Which I feel for someone who has been at a professional level for at least like 5 or 6 years, is, you know, with 15 years of experience. And I'm not just like a seamstress, but I'm also like a cosplayer. So not only do I know how to sew, but I know the importance of all the things that they're looking for as a cosplayer.
Right.
But I mean, I don't usually put that. I usually have kind of like a drop off right now. Until I get like so many requests that I can't handle them. Right now, I usually top it at like 10 or 15 hours, and then I don't charge over that. So if I go over that time frame, then it's just not. I don't charge extra for that, and that's just like my own thing right now because I feel like I'm already at the higher end of commission costs. And some people think I'm really inexpensive, and then other people think I'm really expensive. So I guess it's like I don't know if people are just used to different things. So.
Yeah, it's all like their perception, yeah.
Yeah, so like for me, how I charge right now is I feel comfortable with. So.
Okay. We actually have a question from Facebook. Well, okay, Ashley says, we're working on a group cosplay for Demon Slayer for fan fusion. What tools and materials do you guys like to use for swords due to the cosplay regulations? So we'll touch on that a little bit, and then we'll get into the sewing tools, yeah? Sam's ready.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Props. Sam does props a lot. So right now, if you're looking for something that has durability, is safe, can go to a convention, think about plastics, okay? So think about PVC pipes. Think about something like MDF, a wood that's made from different pulps that have been combined. They can break easily. It's lightweight. If you paint it and seal it, they'll have no idea it's wood.
Well, it can't be solid wood, right? It can't be just straight solid wood.
I brought solid wood props to the fan fusion, had no problems because they didn't know it was solid wood.
All right. Sam's going to share her secrets.
Lightweight woods like MDF.
Balsa? Balsa's not that. Yeah.
You can't tell. You can't tell.
Yeah.
They're just so light. Plus, if you want to do something that has like a lot of detail work, I honestly suggest using insulation foam, using the pink sheets that are thicker. Cut them out, sand them, seal them in 2 coats of wood glue, and then paint them. If you do not seal them and you spray paint them, I mean, it'll look like you melted it. So if you want a melty prop,
Yeah.
cool. But something I also want to suggest is using, what you can do is you can use dowel rods and you can sandwich them in between two pieces of really cheap floor mats. And those dowel rods will keep it from
Flopping
flopping
around.
too much and still keep it
Oh, we both did.
Yes. You can also use tinfoil and armature wire and then cover that in foam clay.
Foam clay actually is a new product. Not really, it's pretty new, right? I think it's amazing. I love foam clay.
Yeah.
I think it's just barely a year old now, since like 'cause they've been testing different versions of it, and better formulas have been coming out over the past 6 months.
Yeah, so foam clay is amazing, but that's for another chat, for another day, for another chat. So I hope that helped you, Ashley. We're gonna move on to our sewing tools. So let's start from the beginning. I mean, what do you start with?
You talked about measuring clients, and measuring. There's a lot of people that get very confused with measuring.
Yes. I do send all my clients a measurement sheet, and it's very, I seriously probably looked at like 50 different measuring sheets, and I'll usually, some of them are really complicated, and I don't trust that the average person will be able to give me those accurate measurements. So I find ones that are pretty user-friendly, and if they've never done it before, I actually have a YouTube video that shows how to take your measurements, because even if you're ordering a cosplay, if you take your measurements like you wish you looked, like where you suck it in and like
Right.
pull it really tight.
Where you think you will be in like 3 months or 4 months?
No, don't do that. And I have had clients change, like lose weight or gain weight in between, and that's always just something you have to work with someone individually for. It just kind of depends on the, a case by case basis. But I mean, a lot of times when someone says, "Oh, I plan on losing weight," like,
wait until you lost it,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
So
we've all been planning on losing weight for quite some time.
So Diana, send over that YouTube link. We can throw it up in the description any chance you get. So anything you have you want to share, I'm sure these guys would love to utilize it. So yeah, send that over whenever you can. I am still not very good at taking measurements either. Like not because like I'm like, oh, I don't want to be this size or that size. I don't know. I just suck at it.
I worked for a men's warehouse, aka After Hours formal wear, for almost 5 years.
So you're a measuring expert.
So I had to tailor men into tuxedos and suits. Suits are very fitted. So oddly enough, I can eyeball people now. And I can be like, oh, you're this. How do you know that? I don't know.
You do know.
Like, I looked at myself and I was like, oh, I put on about 2 inches here. I got to work on that. Like, I was right. I measured myself. I'm like, how do I know this? Like,
Yeah.
it's just you get used to looking at people a certain way. But one thing I suggest for measuring, you have a measuring tape. They're soft. I'm just going to bring my little tiny back box over here of tools because, why not? But these are super cheap.
Have a lot of them too. Like, don't just get one. Get like 4 because you're gonna lose them.
Try to find some extra large ones too.
Yeah, and
measure height, right?
And fun fact, the loose plastic ones, they will stretch. So if you're using the same one like for years, you'll actually start stretching it out, and you'll need to replace it so that it's more accurate.
Mine
So,
is a nylon.
something to remember.
It has nylon inside of it. It's like
Hardcore.
you're like, what the? But this is also expensive. This is like a $6 measuring tape. That's actually a lot of money for a measuring tape.
Well, considering supplies, yeah.
All right. So other than measuring tapes, what other tools do you like to use?
I think the other most important thing is your seam ripper.
Oh my god. I have like so many too. I'm gonna grab mine over here. Where's mine? Oh,
Yeah, and I think I have a couple of them.
Mine's also a cleaner. It cleans my sewing machine.
here's one of
too.
mine. I have a billion of these.
Yeah. The one that Sam has is like the one that usually comes with your machine,
I think
or
this one
has
does.
like the little brush on the end, and
I broke my other one.
This one came with my machine, I think.
This is why you have multiples, because sometimes you'll get really angry at a seam, and the metal.
yeah.
Yeah, this will like pop out. Yeah, I've done it.
This one, I have 2 that I use. This one is the Clover one, And that's my favorite, like, cheap one. And not cheap, but it's still, like, I want to say it's around 10 or 12
The grip
bucks.
is good on it, so you don't slip that much.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really nice. And then I also have this fancy one that I got from this cool guy at a trade show, but it actually comes out, and so I can put the sharp pointy parts inside and throw it in my purse.
Oh,
and
nice.
then, like, flip it out.
That is nice.
The only thing is this is made out of cedar, because I'm also, like, I love wood, but it's round, so I didn't think about this when I bought it, but whenever I put it down, it rolls away from me.
And that's something that, like, a lot of people don't think about is like it looks great, it looks pretty, but then also the functionability when you're not using it, you know. Like, so I have this actually measuring tape, and I know it's ridiculous because I hate rolling the measuring tape back up, so I got one of these. So
yeah, it's just a little bin that I put all my stuff in so it won't roll away. Yeah,
me too. I have this little baskety thing with stuff in it too.
We should talk about this at one point. Do either of you have one of these?
What is it?
It's a scissor sharpener.
Oh, no, I don't. I probably should.
Right. Yeah.
Please get the brand that
used to use it. I don't use it anymore.
If you don't have a normal sharpener, because you can just sharpen scissors with, like, the same thing you sharpen knives or X-Actos with. But if you don't and you decide to get one of these, it needs to match the brand of scissors you have. Because it's actually made for that specific metal and brand. And some of the scissors curve differently, so you can actually dull your blade.
That makes sense.
I mean, I've done it before.
But let's move on to scissors. Like, people think if you're just starting out, if you're just starting out, can I just use the scissors in my desk drawer? No, no, don't.
There's so
I've got
many
a couple here.
Memes about
scissors,
using your fabric scissors for paper or other things. And there's a reason for that. It's not just because we are hoarding scissors. We are. But
we are hoarding scissors.
We are hoarding scissors. But it's because when you use other stuff to cut your scissors, you can get tiny little nicks in your scissors. And then when you cut fabric, especially when you're cutting shears or really lightweight fabrics, you'll pull the threads and put runs in your fabric with your scissors. So that's why you generally just use your fabric scissors for fabric, and then have another pair for your paper and your random whatever you're cutting things.
And you also can have different types of fabric scissors for different kinds of fabric. Like this I use for my leathers.
Yeah.
Leathers
I've got leather.
And then this is more like cottons and shears, something that's a little bit softer. And then, I don't know if do you guys have pinking shears? Because I have pinking
I do, yeah. I got mine on Amazon, actually. They're pretty good. And I always label mine, so, like, people do not use them. That's the worst thing, is when your family uses your fabric scissors, you're like, no! So I actually, before this, I had a big ribbon that said, do not use, and then that fell off, so then I just put a regular ribbon. So I mark mine, and then this is actually my sister's, so she has these gingers. This is pretty obvious not to use them because it has its own case. But I have many times, like, when I didn't have my own cosplay room, and I had to do it outside in the family area, oh my god, I'd be like, where's my fabric scissors? Who used it? Who am I going to murder? You know, so it's just like, yeah. And then I have regular craft scissors that cut all different things. And yeah, you're definitely going to need more than one pair of scissors when you're starting cosplay.
There's also other implements, those little rolling.
Oh, the rotary cutters?
The rotary cutters?
Yeah.
I have one here. Let's see. Yes, so my rotary cutter's here.
I don't have those yet.
I also have a special pair of scissors for silk.
Okay.
That has like super tiny serrations so that it grabs the fabric as you cut so that it doesn't slide. It works, but it's kind of crazy. It's actually like really weird to use them versus other scissors. So I only use them for my silk stuff when I do silk stuff. But
so, and then
I also a fun little hack I have is I love command hooks and tacks are all over my sewing room to hang stuff on. So right next to on the side of my sewing desk, I actually have a command hook and a smaller pair of my scissors so that I can always grab a pair of scissors. Because I don't know, even when I sewed like in my kitchen, I couldn't set up my ironing board and my sewing table in the same place. So I always had to walk back and forth. And so my scissors ended up like in a trail all over the place, and I'd have to keep finding where I put them. So now I always have a pair like I always have a pair hanging there so that I
Yeah,
have it.
for sure. I've had that happen as well, where I'm like, crap, where are my scissors? But
Yeah.
also, like, talking about scissors, not just for fabric, but I also have a couple of embroidery scissors for cutting small details or, threads. I know there's other, I should get one of those ones that are just like the ones that you squeeze to cut threads. And I like to keep this one near my machine. So always really good to have these tiny, tiny things. A couple different ones for different projects because, they will dull. So, one for maybe
I have
detailing.
these are applique scissors. I don't know if you've ever seen them.
Ooh.
Um, but it's basically so that you can pick up the fabric on one side and get right up next to it and cut it. And they're really, really great for cutting right next to the edge of things.
Sam's.
So if you do a lot of applique and stuff like that, yeah, they're super useful, and they're not straight across. If you see that they're bent
Yeah,
up,
because
so
you
they're easy
you
to
have to
hold.
wiggle in there.
Yeah, so that you can really get in there.
That's so
They're really
cool.
good.
I took an
I
X-Acto
use
knife.
them a lot.
At one point, I even took a hot knife to an applique because I couldn't get it.
Wow.
And just melted the fabric to it. I was fine.
I've done that before.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
Great, Sam. So obviously, there's a lot of different kinds of cutting tools. Especially have some really really the craft ones that you're going to use for like your foam and stuff. Stuff that's going to really dull. And actually, since we talk about cutting tools as well, if you're working with a lot of foam, which we'll talk about later, you'll probably have separate cutting tools for that as well that you won't use with your fabric.
Yeah,
So
because you can. There are some foams now that you can sew. So unfortunately, foam has now joined the sewing enclave.
oh my gosh.
It's actually pretty cool. There's some really cool uses for it. Same thing with thermoplastics. There have been several for years that you can sew onto garments. So that's where you want to think about your scissors and your needles and what you're going to use.
Like Wonderflex, can you sew Wonderflex? Because it's pretty thin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it was originally created for. Was for theater who they needed something to stand up. Have it fabric so you don't see. Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
That's what it was for. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's what it was for.
Sounds legit. I believe it.
I used to know these things, and then I'm like, wait, am I making them up now?
Oh my god, I do that.
You're like, I swear this is true.
Yeah, I do that
This is what I
too.
remember.
Like, I think this is right, and then I just fill in the blanks. Like, okay, right? Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, so
Totally.
cutting implements are very important for sewing. And there's actually like sewing guides online that have different scissors they recommend for different things.
And they don't have to be expensive. You don't need to get the super expensive Ginger scissors. Just get, even a brand new pair of Fiskars you can keep as your fabric scissors if that's in your budget. Don't think that you have to drop like 30, 40 plus bucks for a good pair of scissors, which...
And if you really can't afford like continuously buying scissors or stuff like that, like just invest in a sharpener too. Because then you can use the same pair of scissors for a very long time.
That's a good point.
You'll know when they're bad when you try to close them and there's too much of a gap. Then you need to replace them.
And you can hear it too. You can sometimes hear the difference when you're cutting. So once you get,
or you can feel it.
Yeah, when they're separated. I know one of my scissors did that event. I was like, no, one of my little embroidery scissors. So, but yeah, as far as cutting, do you guys use any kind of what do you do with your patterns? Like pattern weights? Do you copy the pattern? Do you use the pattern?
I use command clips.
Okay, so you command clipped it to the fabric?
Yeah, or I'll use command clips, or I have magnets that I attach to my sewing machine that are meant to act as guides.
Oh, okay.
So I treat those as fabric weights.
Okay, I actually
most of my patterns aren't paper. I actually find garments that fit me well at thrift stores, and I break them down and I label them. And those are my patterns because then I can roll them up and fold them, and if they get wrinkly, I can iron them back out.
Yeah, I use a lot of commercial patterns. So I just cut them out, and I got this habit from my mom because my mom was so thrifty. She's like, cut out all the sizes in case we use it again for something else. So I just cut out all the sizes. I pin it to my fabric, and then I just draw whatever it is that I want underneath it, like the different lines and stuff. So I know a lot of people trace it. What do you prefer, Diana?
I do a weird combination of either drafting or like using a base pattern and then adding onto it. But I use, if I'm drafting it, I use fabric paper, which is basically like butcher paper, except it has graph lines on it that are all 1 square inch, so it helps you draft better. So you kind of know some symmetry and all of that wonderful stuff. But I also use something called Easy Pattern, which is kind of like a no-sew interfacing. It has the same texture as that, where if I'm tracing something and I need to alter it a lot, I will use that because you can sew it and you can pin it and it drapes the same as fabric, so it's a little bit easier to figure out what you need to change about the pattern. So I do those 2 things. And I have a whole bunch of commercial patterns. I also collect vintage patterns. I have like probably over 200 vintage patterns because I really love the 60s and the 70s, and so
I have a couple of them. Like, maybe I should just give them to you.
I'm weird. Like I don't have any commercial patterns anymore. Like what I have left, like people made me use them. But I completely draft from scratch, or I use garments as an example. Like I'll look at something I have in my closet and I'll break it down mentally, but that's just because I like puzzles. It's not the easiest thing to do, and I think the only reason I'm comfortable with doing it is because I tailored menswear for so long. I know how garments fit together.
Yeah, so
once I fully draft something out, then I just kind of like fold it up and I use the little, like little binder clips, and I just clip a little picture or a little note on there so I know what that is. Because a lot of times I'll use the same patterns over and over again, like corset patterns or jacket patterns. Like they're all kind of the same basic pattern, so I just know, oh, I know this already fits me, so I can just alter this a little bit and it'll work. Things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm not good at drafting patterns, so I usually have to start with the commercial one. So that's usually how I do it. But I'll take different pieces from different patterns if I need to. But yeah, I mean, if you're just starting out, then I would probably start with a commercial pattern, and kind of go from there. Yes. Or like Sam said, like
measurements, because the sizes on the back of them are not U.S. sizes.
Yeah,
they're original. Yeah. They're some of them are updating, but not everyone is. So how sizing was originally drafted in like the late 40s, early 50s, and they really haven't changed much since then. And a lot of them also use European or Italian sizing, which is completely different.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you will have a bigger pattern size. Don't be upset about it.
It's just a number.
It runs bigger. Yeah, it's just a number. And also pay attention to your pattern seam allowance, because it'll tell you if it has, normally I think it's 5/8 is pretty standard, but they'll tell you what it is. And if you sew it differently, you'll end up with a garment either way too big or too small, depending on what you do. So make sure you check that on your commercial garments because it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a victim of that in my early days.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm such a huge size, and then I would make it and it would be huge, and I would be like, these patterns lied. But
yeah,
but
exactly.
It was because I was sewing it with like way too small of a seam allowance. So.
And then things don't match up too, and you'll be like, what the heck? And you're just like, oh well, whatever. And then you're like, oh, why is it puckering in weird places? Like, oh, maybe I should follow the pattern. Yeah, it's fine. I'll just sew it around.
It'll be fine.
Yeah. So let's talk about machines. Like, I mean, obviously, if you're going to sew something, and I've seen this conversation before, where someone was like, I'm going to buy something, like they don't own anything. Should I get a serger or a sewing machine? And I was kind of shocked that people are like, get a serger. And I'm like, well, but a serger is so much more limiting. If you're going to get one machine, start with the sewing machine. Yeah. Start with the 1 needle sewing machine. Serger is a great thing. It's not necessarily even an advanced thing, but it's not as nearly as, versatile as a sewing machine is.
Yeah, I used to have a ton of sewing machines. I used to collect old ones.
Nice.
But now I have about 4 major ones. So I have 2 sewing machines and 2 sergers. But I think what people don't understand is there seems to be a lot of misunderstandings about sergers and thinking that they sew things together, because smaller sergers don't do that. So if you get a 3 or 4 thread serger, you don't use them to sew things together. You use them to serge the ends. If you buy a big 5-thread one, that one has an attachment where you can actually sew things together and cut the edges off and it'll serge and everything. But like I've seen a lot of people where they suggest they get a serger because they think that sergers sew and serge.
Like they think it skips
But
a step.
yeah, but the smaller ones don't do that. So if you're buying like a little 3-thread little serger, it doesn't have the ability to actually sew things together where they'll stay together well, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I was like surprised that I saw this. Like people, more than one person in this, I was in some sewing forum, more than one person suggested, just get a serger. I'm like, God, what? No. Like, you're right.
Weird.
If you can't, I mean, even five needle sergers, it's a little bit more advanced or probably even more expensive than anyone wants to spend on a machine.
They're very expensive, and they're just like a giant pain in the butt. Like they're a pain in the butt to thread and to like service and to just deal with. I have a 5-thread, and it's huge and it's heavy, and it's annoying to use. Which is why I have a smaller one.
Right.
So that if I just like basic stuff, I just use the little one because it's just so much easier. But yeah, and if you want to do edge finishing, you can just zigzag stitch your seam allowances if you want to do that. I mean, there's tons of other ways to finish your seams if you're worried about it.
French seams, or I'll do a rolled seam, or sometimes I'll put bias if I'm concerned about the strength of the material.
You can do French seams.
I mean, and it's just, there's a lot of ways to put it together. I've never used a serger before. I know how they operate. I refuse to buy one just because, no. I look at those threads and I'm like, this is like me waiting to get caught up in something. And I'm like trapped in my own serger, and I'll be crying for help, and no one will be there to save me.
It does take a while to get used to like remembering how to thread everything, and I can do it now in my sleep.
Yeah.
Some seams that they sell now that are kind of expensive. Like, don't get me wrong, I bought a $35 foot attachment, and you do have to sharpen the blade on it, but it has a blade sharpener. It tells you what zigzag stitch to use and what depth. And it essentially acts like a mock serger, and it cuts the fabric for you while you do the
That's a great alternative.
You can attach it, and you can do that. Just remember that you're going to have to take care of it and maintain it. But if you do, then
I know for my serger, I've spent sometimes like 30-40 minutes trying to thread it. So I don't know if you don't know this trick and you have a serger. Here's the trick. When you're switching out thread colors, tie the old thread to the new thread one at a time and fish it through. So like what you would normally do is the first thread, do that one and work it all the way through, and then change out the next spool, tie it together, and then go all the way through. And that way you can change your thread without actually having to thread everything.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but out of machines, like I have 2 machines. I have a computerized machine, which was great until I found out that it's either the hand wheel has a broken mechanical part or the programming is off. So now we've been trying to find a specialist that can fix it. So be prepared if you have a computerized one go awry. And you take it to your normal person, they're like, I have no idea why this isn't working. It might get tricky. So I also have just an industrial one, like a plain machine. You just plug it in. The only electricity is what powers the wheel. And it's a Singer, and it's heavy duty. And it can chew through anything. Like I've sewn 3 layers of vinyl, and it's like, whatever. Which also means if you have delicate fabrics, put it on a slower speed and be careful.
Yeah, and there's a variety of like difficulties in complications in sewing machines, I guess. Like if you're just starting, you can get some with just a couple simple stitches, usually under $100, and then of course then you can go up as more stitches or computerized and stuff like that. So everyone's talking about how many sewing machines I have. I only have one, and I have 2. I have a serger and I have regular. But I live with my sister, and she has 1 each as well. So technically we have 2. So like right now my serger's out of commission, so I'm using hers. So probably when she moves out or whatever, maybe I'll consider getting my duplicate ones. But it is if you can get to that point to get 2 machines, it's super handy, super handy. You know, if one
if your machine breaks down, it's the week before the con, and you still have a costume to finish.
Yeah, and you're not getting that machine back before.
Yeah, so you need to have a backup machine.
Yeah.
Or know how to do hand sewing and just be prepared for more.
Oh, I hate hand sewing. I hate it.
This gold skirt behind me, I have to hand sew everything because the gold coins have to be flipped a certain way. So I have to hand sew before I can machine sew.
Well, there's things that you have to hand sew like that. But when people are like, I don't want to learn how to sew, I'm so scared, I just hand sew everything. I'm like, but it's so much easier. Like, your life will be so much. Yeah. So I get a little frustrated when they're like, no, I'm so scared. I'm like, just do it. Just do it. You'll gain so much more of your life back.
I also wanted to say about sewing machines, if it's something that like you want to try out, like if you are scared of it, you can go to a lot of like secondhand stores and pick up a machine for like 25, 30 bucks. And a lot of like secondhand places will actually test machines and they'll tell you if they are still working or not. And that way you can like try it out for cheap and see if it's something you want to invest more in. And then when you do like buy a nicer machine, I know a lot of times when you look at like model numbers, it's like, oh, here's like the 116 and the 118, the 120. A lot of times the difference between like the cheapest model and the next model that's like $100 more is literally just some quilting stitches. So like be aware of what you're buying. Like don't spend the extra money if you're not going to actually use that stuff. Especially in sewing machines, because there's apparel sewing machines and then there's quilting machines. So if you're not doing quilting, chances are you're not going to need a lot of that stuff. You probably don't need like 500 decorative stitches. They're fun to have, but I mean, are you going to use them to warrant the cost of getting that? So, you know, always like look at what you're getting for that extra money if you're going to go up to another model number.
I'm pretty guilty because mine has a lot of decorative stitches, but it was a Hello Kitty machine. It's a Hello Kitty machine, so I'm like, I'm getting that. So
mine has a lot of other stuff besides decorative stitches, but that is one of the things it has is a bunch of decorative stitches.
So, you know, talking about sewing machines, obviously, there's a lot of other accessories you can buy with sewing machines, sewing foots and, you know, like swing arms and all this other stuff. So, I mean, let's talk about that. What do you think is, you know, is ideal to have with your sewing machine? Like different kinds of feet, like...
I think the most important feat to have as a cosplayer is an invisible zipper foot. You can use a regular zipper foot, and that a regular zipper foot usually comes with your machine. It's not something you generally have to buy, but an invisible zipper foot has been like super helpful for me, putting invisible zippers in like perfectly so you don't see them. So I use that foot all the time. And my Teflon foot or roller foot, which is for sewing on top of like patent vinyl or leather or anything that's got like a rough surface where if you try to sew on it, it's going to bunch up. Those feet let you slide right over it. And I know I use mine a lot, but that's because I use a lot of like patent like stretch spandex, but like wet look spandex or vinyl and stuff like that. But it's saved me.
But I'm sure that, you know, in cosplay, we use all different kinds of materials, and so I'm sure Teflon foot's going to come in more in handy as a cosplayer than just as an average, you know, seamstress. So for sure.
And they're not expensive feet to get either.
Bring that up to the camera, Sam.
The little tiny plastic foot.
Yeah.
It just slides. It's just like woo.
Oh no! I think the only other one I use, I have a piping foot, but I've actually found that using your zipper foot with piping works better than using the piping foot.
Yeah, I've actually used my zipper foot for similar projects, and I'm like, yeah, this is totally fine, you know. I know they have those kits of like 20 different sewing feet. Yeah. But sometimes you can just use the same one for other projects, you know, that they weren't intended for. So
I only use like my rolled hem foot, my zipper foot, and my buttonhole sewing thing that controls where everything's going. But like, and then obviously like the fake serger, I'm starting to learn that one. But
that's really cool, actually. Do you like? You can throw up maybe a link of the one you bought, because I'd actually never even heard of this kind of foot. But it's a really good option for people that do want to kind of step up their game a little bit, but maybe can't afford a serger. Because you know, when you start doing competitions, you know, they want to see. Sometimes they check, you know, seams and stuff and see underneath, and that could be a good option for people who are concerned about, you know, finishing their seams. So
yeah, because it's like this, and you kind of have to install it differently. Sorry, like this goes and gets installed at the top, and then you use a screw, and then it locks into place, and there's a blade that cuts through things as you're going. So it's pretty awesome. scary.
Victoria says, I need to sew. I need to learn to sew. Any takers? Who's gonna start doing sewing lessons? We should start.
Actually, actually,
Oh,
I actually moved. I used to have a little bedroom studio, and I just moved back to Gilbert, and we converted what used to be our woodwork shop into a giant studio. So it actually has extra machines set up and extra sewing tables. And I was hoping, like, obviously I can't do it now, but once stay-at-home orders are lifted and things get easier, anyone's invited as long as I know you're coming, but to come over and you can work on something and I'll help you with it. Or if you want to use stuff here, if you don't have a sewing machine, I have extra ones. So
yeah. That's actually I do that too as well because like I said, I have two machines here too, and I only have this big space for another month because I'm moving. I'm moving to Gilbert actually, but I'm gonna have a smaller space. Yeah, so I used to have people over. You know, some of my friends came over. My friend Morgan, who I taught her how to start sewing, and yeah, people would come over here as well. And I've actually taught a couple people how to sew too. So yeah, maybe we should start like some sort of like sewing teachers guild.
yeah, I used to teach when I was a teacher, an actual teacher. Well, not an actual, but you know, when I was a teacher before. Which was my job before sewing job, I used to do sewing lessons for like other teachers' kids.
Oh, nice.
So if their kids thought that sewing was easy, they were like, I'll pay you to teach them that sewing's not as easy as they think.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that sounds amazing. Victoria says, knowing me, I'll end up sewing my fingers together. Ooh, that sounds messy. You don't want to go to the emergency room right now.
I have never sewn through my fingers.
Me neither. No, me
Even
neither.
when I had an industrial machine, I've never done it. Sam's looking away.
Sam's like, I'm guilty.
I've known people that have done it, but
Oh,
I
so you're
never my,
were you sewing like this with the needle here?
I slid and it went straight through, but like
Ooh.
I'm also one of those weird people. It's like, oh, cool, look, yeah, you know.
Sam,
I can't really high pain tolerance. So
she
I'm like,
likes
oh,
pain.
This is awesome. My husband's like.
Yeah, it sounds awful.
Oh, I stick my finger all the time when I'm hand sewing. Way
Oh.
more than when I'm actually sewing.
Me
Yeah.
too. I've like how many times I've like gotten it in my nail, like oh, that's the worst.
Do that? Like, why?
I don't know.
Like, just go right in the nail.
Like if it's something really thick, you know, and you're too lazy to like
Yeah.
do it properly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I actually bought. So I just recently bought a special thimble when I was at that trade show. Because I have long nails, and I've always had long nails ever since I was like a kid, ever since I was like 11 years old. And I can't fit my fingers inside thimbles, ever. My nails are always way too long. But they do have some like leather thimbles that fit around your finger. And then this lady had custom thimbles, so I actually bought like a nice pretty thimble with like butterflies on it that can actually like fit over my fingernail and everything.
I got one of these. This is that
So
fingernail
happy.
kind, right? So you can
Yeah.
kind of, but it's too big because my fingers are small. But yeah,
So-
I tried that one. I don't know how it
That's
works.
the problem. It's like every thimble for an adult. I'm like,
These
Yeah,
are
they
pretty
don't fit
small.
on your fingers.
These are pretty small. I don't know where they came from.
these don't stay on my hand.
But yeah, thimbles are not made for women because I mean, even my nails are short. Like I still like it feels weird having it touch the bottom of this, you know.
Yeah.
So that's why I tried to get this one. I don't know. I don't use it much because I hate hand sewing anyway, and it's still too big. Like I've got it squeezed down, and it's still too big. But yeah. Anyway.
So outside of
That's a
sewing
good
machine,
segue.
we talked about tailor's chalk or pens or how we do drafting patterns.
Let's see. I use a pencil where you can change out like the chalk sticks in it. That's cute.
This is my Disneyland mug, but
Oh,
so yeah, it's the little tiki. It's from the Tiki Room.
oh, how cute!
But,
Cool.
so I have I use the iron erasable pens, but
I need to get one of
only
those.
like the Madame. I only like the Madame So ones. Those are the only ones that seem to actually work well every time.
Madam So. Okay.
Yeah, because I've ordered like generic ones and they're just not the same. They're
I've
not
had
the
that.
same as hers.
I've had that experience
Um,
as well. That's why I didn't use them. But you said Madame So. That's the name of it.
yeah, like
Okay,
it's just yeah, just madamso.com. She sells like mostly these and then like some feet kits and that's like it.
I'm going now to the
But
website.
the only thing about these is you should not use them on the outside of vinyl. Even if you iron it on the wrong side, it won't really come off. And the same thing with like some satins and like more silky fabrics and stuff. I've noticed it leaves like the color is gone, but it leaves kind of like a shadow line.
Hmm.
So always, anytime you're doing an iron off anything with a pen or a marker, test it on your fabric first to make sure that it will actually come all the way off. Because they're really great with cottons, but if you're using something else, it's always kind of like hit or miss. The other thing I use is this. This is a quilting chalk pen. It's from Clover, and it actually has a little like rotary. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's got like the chalk is all in here, and then as I roll it around, it leaves a little trail, and
I need one
it's
of
like a
those.
hot pink. So it shows up on like everything.
I
A lot
just
of
have.
the good stuff like this is in quilting in the quilting section. So
Use Taylor's
yeah,
chalk.
OG guys. This is OG. This is all I have.
I don't have mine handy, but I have an actual like chalk like pencil, and you just change out the like they're just little like the little sticks of chalk, and you just change out different colors.
Yeah.
So I use that, which is just a fancy version of your Taylor's chalk. So, but it's easier to like control and maintain and stuff. So, yeah. So whatever you use is don't use a pen, please. Don't use markers. Don't use any of those. But yeah, they're definitely handy to have around, especially if you just have those Taylor's chalk things. I have a couple of that's a whole box of it, isn't it, Sam? Yeah, a whole box of it. So it's always good to have it, handy in different places wherever you are.
Do we have any questions? Because we have got other tools we can talk about, but we give people a second to ask questions about sewing tools.
Yeah, sure.
Since we're all here.
Well, since we're kind of waiting for a question. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, we just got started a little bit later, so I was like,
Yeah. So since we're waiting for questions, like Diana, is there like a unique tool that is not usually that's how I say like a special tool or something that is not very common to use? She's gonna go searching.
I'm trying to. I want to find it. If I have it, like, do I have it here? I'm hoping I have it here.
Because there's a lot of obviously like generic tools like scissors and stuff like that, and there's a bunch of other tools. Like I feel like it's a kitchen, like there's a lot of specific tools for specific things that you don't necessarily need, but it's cool if you can have them.
So there's two tools that I use a lot. I'll go get it. Hold on. I see it across the room.
No problem. So Victoria has a question that we can talk about a little bit. She says, "What is the easiest fabric and what is the most difficult fabric to work with?" And
it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
It's going to be different for everybody.
And if we're gonna talk like in general, I would say like silk is pretty difficult to sew. And all obviously,
Chiffon, like the sheer fabrics.
yeah, chiffon and
Like hiding the hems and seams.
oh god, yeah, chiffon's the worst. And obviously like
silk chiffon is a combination of all the things that are horrible about them.
and then of course like all the pleathers and the plastic type of those thick ones, those are obviously going to be difficult if you don't have the right tools. So easiest obviously is cotton, cotton polyester blends. Those are, cotton's the easiest. Sometimes if you have a thick enough like a muslin or anything, they can even stick and you don't even need to like pin them together, and you can just like sew them. Don't do that though, that's bad habit. But sometimes they're just so coarse that you can just stick them together and just sew. But yeah, definitely.
See, I started sewing on spandex and stretch fabrics and pleather, so those were easy for me. Apparently, they're not easy for everybody else. Like they were like just second nature to me. I just pull it out, and all of a sudden I got like something. Like this is stretchy fabric back here, and I just threw it on my mannequin, trimmed it, and all of a sudden I had a skirt. I wasn't even trying. But I am really bad with cottons. I'm really bad with anything that has no stretch at all, and that's just because I got so used to having an allowance that when there isn't any, I have to really kind of change my thought.
That's true.
process.
And that's in terms of like patterning. So when we talk about like sewing and patterning, yeah, that you're right.
And I have very large hips. So like, while it's not a problem up here for me because I'm not overly busty, it's a serious problem for me when it comes to my butt.
So in that aspect, it's something with a little bit of stretch.
Down there.
Yeah, some fabric with a little bit of stretch, even like jersey knit is going to be easier to work with in terms of like not having to have exact cuts and stuff. So yeah, in that aspect, yes, those are easier. So did you find it?
Yes, I did. And I know, like for me, I really love doing fancy stuff. So I work with a lot of satins and taffetas and chiffons and silks. And I know a lot of people like that's their thing that it's really hard to do and they're really intimidated by. So I think for everyone, like you said, it's different, like what you find difficult. So these two special tools, I know what one of them's called. I don't know what the other one's called, but
Look like surgical tools.
they do the same. Right. They do the same thing, and I do use them a lot. They're basically for either turning channels inside out or pulling elastic through a channel.
Yeah.
So, and you might have seen these before and had no idea that's what they're for.
They're called point
But this
turners?
one is- yeah, so this one is, I don't know what this one's called, but it's basically a hook. There's a hook on one end, and then there's a hole, and this is for like really tiny channels, so like spaghetti straps and stuff like that. You basically stick it, if the channel's inside out, push the whole thing down in here, hook out on one end, and then just pull it, and it'll turn inside out super fast. So you
Cool.
don't have to like take your safety pin and like shove it in there on one end and like do the whole, it's just really quick.
Oh my god.
So the only thing this isn't good for is if something's really curvy because it's long and straight, but it's really good for straps and stuff. So if it's long and curvy, there's this thing, and this is called a bodkin. It basically looks like a pair of tweezers with a jump ring on it. So it looks like this,
Wow.
and you can push the jump ring down and it tightens it. So if I'm trying to pull like elastic through a waistband, and it's a really big waistband because I'm doing a gathered waist, I can just like crimp this on one end of the elastic and then just pull it all the way through the channel. So I can like shove it in there. And it's a lot easier to follow than a safety pin. So if you've ever done this safety pin thing where you safety pin the edge of an elastic and then shimmied it through a channel for a waistband, this is so much faster, and you can just, and it grabs it really good. So there's only been a couple of times where like I've lost it in the middle of it because it didn't grab it tight enough, but that's probably, yeah, but that's usually because my channel is too small and like I'm having a hard time like pulling it through.
Yeah, I try to get the
yeah,
big giant safety pins. But that's cool
Yeah.
that, especially that long skinny thing. That's awesome because I usually get like some sort of like a BBQ stick, and I'm always like trying to like stick it on one end and like shove it through, and it takes forever, and I throw it away because I'm mad. Yeah.
Also like super handy just to have around, like to push in collar edges or like push stuff out.
Like the little
'Cause
corners.
It's not like a sharp.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
because it's not a sharp end; it's rounded on the end. So like it's just like a nice like pointy thing that you can use.
Nice. That's
a lot
cool.
of times you need a pointy thing.
Yeah, and that's what I do. I mean, I just keep like sticks around like for pointing things, but I probably should maybe get an actual pointy tool. Hey, Sean, thanks for joining.
I use chopsticks sometimes, so.
Yeah, chopsticks, and I use like the BBQ skewer sticks, and yeah.
Yeah.
Victoria says, I've heard faux leather and real leather are difficult depending on the machine used. Yeah, some people love to work with leather though, but you know they're used to it. And she's got another question here for us. At what age did you start sewing, and what was your first project?
So I was like, I'm such a late person to all of this. So I didn't start sewing till I was in my early 20s. And I'm completely self-taught. So when I got into sewing, the main reason I wanted to sew anything was because I was really into Lolita fashion. And at that time, it was impossible to buy it or get it anywhere here in the United States. And even if I could,
It was
the
expensive.
sizing was also small. There's no way it would fit me. So I actually taught myself to sew so that I could make Lolita dresses. So like my first projects were some really sketchy Lolita dresses.
Oh my god, I want to
Back
see
in the
them.
day, so. I have pictures of them still somewhere back on my Flickr account, like way long ago.
Okay, you'll have to share them at some
But
point.
yeah.
Because I'm like a closet Lolita fan. Like I never was a Lolita, but I followed like the live journal and stuff. I was a lurker. Like I always wanted to as well, but for me it was like so expensive. Like I just wasn't that time for me. But now that I like can afford and can make Lolita, I'm like I don't know. I feel too old to be wearing Lolita.
Yeah, It's hard. I do Lolita like every once in a while at cons, and I'm like, all right, I got it out of my system. No, but yeah, I don't do it as much as I used to. I used to do it so much. I used to dress up all the time and go to all the gatherings and all that stuff.
Oh.
Yeah,
I know all the like, Angelic Pretty and all these brands, and I was like, oh, Sophia,
yeah.
I want to. But yeah, I never could get into that. So, but I'm more into like Lolita cosplays, like I actually was gonna wear my Lolita Princess Bubblegum today, and I was like, nah, I'm kind of lazy. So,
Oh,
yeah, I was gonna wear it, but then I also have a crown for that, and I need to get a new headset, so I'll wear it some other time. Yeah, Sam, I know you mentioned it
Uh,
already, but you can mention it again.
wait, what?
How old were you where you started sewing, and what was your first
So
project?
my grandma taught me how to sew something, but honestly, I don't remember half the stuff that my grandma showed me. So I'm gonna count on like cosplay way. We'll talk about when I started sewing for cosplay. My first thing that I sewed for cosplay was in like right before Phoenix Fan Fusion in 2014. I had an existing corset that I didn't like the leather on, so I took vinyl. I replaced the leather on that corset with the new vinyl that I had.
Nice.
So that was the first thing I sewed.
That's good.
It was
Did it
really hard.
did it stay together?
Oh yeah, I
Okay.
still have it. It still works.
Nice. That's
Yeah,
good. As long as it
yeah.
still works, it's good.
I had
Um,
leather needles. I'd sewn leather before. I guess I should state that I have sewn leather before, so that was familiar to me. Because when I'd go to summer camps as a kid, and I had like little scholarships to go, and so like they're like, let's learn leather work. I don't know what it was in Arizona about leather work and riding horses, but I saw
Cowboys.
every freaking camp.
It's all the cowboys.
So I can take care of your horse and I can sew you a leather holster. So,
You should make
but
like
yeah,
cosplay
no.
holsters.
Yeah, as far as like sewing goes, like I literally taught myself through Google and a sewing encyclopedia that I have. Like,
And so my mom sewed and her mother sewed, and my mom would make me and my sister like some clothes and our Halloween costumes and stuff when we were young. So I would help her with that, obviously, because she's like, if I'm making it for you, you're helping me. So that's basically how I learned and how I started. So I actually, when I got to college, is when I wanted to learn even more, so I took some college courses. So the first project I made by myself was just like a top and a skirt. Everything else before that I'd made with my mom, with her guidance and stuff. So the first thing by myself was that outfit in college. So, but I'd been sewing for a while. I started cosplaying, when I was 17. So I wasn't new to it. I just was new to like doing it all by myself. So that was
yeah.
mine. Yeah. As Victoria says, we all have to start and grow somewhere. Very true. It doesn't even matter. Some people, like Sam's always like, oh, I've only been doing this for however many years. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. It just matters like how much you've been learning. So, right, Sam? Sam has learned a
I
lot.
read all the time. You,
Sam's
you, you would be a, like, don't come into my computer and look at my library.
That's good.
It
You're
would,
like you're always learning. Like I stopped learning for a long time. Like just when in my 20s, I was just I don't know. I was just crazy. I was crazy. So I didn't learn much until I started again in 2014 because I took a couple years off, and that's when I really started learning stuff. So even though I say I've been cosplaying for like 19 years, it doesn't have anything. It does have a little bit to do with my skill level, but it doesn't always mean your skill level. So if you'd asked me this like 10 years ago, I'd have been like, I don't know how to do wigs. I don't know how to do foam. What's that? So I could just sew, and even then I couldn't even do really difficult stuff. So
For me, like sewing is my forte, and I think that's what most people recognize or know me from is like I love fabric and being able to do like, crazy things with fabric. It's like my
I'm hiring
favorite
her because
thing.
she's awesome.
I'm gonna see if I can pull
Uh,
something up. Hold on, keep talking.
um, yeah, but what I'm trying to do now, and I think it's like I do leather stuff. I mean, I'm not an expert at leather, but I can definitely I've sewn plenty of leather jackets and leather corsets and things like that. I know how it works. I know how to do it, and I'm getting a lot better at foam work and at wig styling. And like that's I'd like to be someone who I feel like I'm confident in all of those things. But I mean, there is still so much more to learn, and even though I've been doing it for so many years, like there's never like a plateau. I feel like like there's always where you can do more. And unfortunately, the crazier you get with it, the more crazy you want to go. Like it, I feel like sometimes I get to this point where I'm like, this isn't big enough. This needs to be crazy. So, I mean, hopefully not everyone's like that, but I feel like when you have the ability to do all these diverse things, you want to do all those diverse things.
So here,
So
bringing
it's
up,
like, oh, well,
there's,
I'll try and like, incorporate all of these different techniques and all of these different things into one costume is like my favorite thing, is trying to really, like I just recently bought a cricket, and I think I use that as an excuse to just like go crazy with my Merida costume and like figure out how to use a cricket on like leather and foam and like on fabric on everything to figure out how to use it. And now, my Merida costume has tons of Celtic design work on it.
oh man, I can't wait to see that. But this costume I brought up was the first one that I had seen on your account that I was like in love with, and I was like, oh my god, this is your your Magikarp, right? This is Magikarp.
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
So
this is actually it's not Magikarp. It's literally just a goldfish princess.
ah, and it's
So
beautiful. Like I don't know if you guys can see, but there's so many different like techniques she's used here and textures, and it's gorgeous. You do amazing stuff. I love it. Yeah.
yeah, that costume was my own one of I started doing a lot of original designs where I was doing my own design work, and so this one was kind of like the last super crazy design that I made, that I took to Costume Con, and I did a lot of fabric manipulation in it because I was learning a lot of techniques, and so I wanted a costume where I could display all of those new techniques I was learning. And so in this costume, there's quilting, there's applique, there's cutouts, there's like layers, there's inverted scallops and all kinds of crazy stuff all over it. The back actually has sequins that the sequins where you change the color by moving them up or down.
The mermaid, I think
So
they called mermaid
the whole
scales.
back, yeah. So and it was really cool because I actually won an award for fabric manipulation at Costume Con, which was like the whole reason I made the costume. So I was like, oh yeah,
That's
like that's what I got
awesome.
recognized for. But it's a really fun costume to wear because it's like super pretty and sparkly
It's gorgeous.
and big.
It's one of my favorites of yours. Yeah, the costume con is something I want to go to at some point if it ever whenever we get back to normal. So
Yeah, I think
we've got a couple
the
things
worst
here.
one about that con is it travel. So
Yeah. So here it says Victoria says which Sabo year was that?
I wore that the year before last.
Okay, it's
So
2018.
I didn't compete or anything in it, like outside of I only competed with that outside of Arizona. So
But you only wore it once in Arizona, and that was Sabo.
yeah, it's
Okay.
a really like big. I feel like everything I usually make big dresses. Like the majority of my cosplays are like big elaborate dresses, and so they're really hot.
Yeah. Which is the worst
Arizona's like
place.
hot all the time.
Yeah.
So
So, and you're making another Merida dress, like your fourth or fifth. And Merida's, I mean, obviously she's Scottish, so she's not wearing, she's all covered up with heavy, like velvety, warm fabrics, right?
yeah,
So,
I did. The one I'm working on right now is it's super pretty, but it's based off of Sunset Dragon's design, um, and it's a little bit different than hers because I felt like it wasn't Merida enough.
yeah,
So I felt like there was a little bit too much like sparkly pretty stuff, and so I took some of the sparkly pretty stuff out and I put a little bit more like the gold work is leather instead of like, but I did use like foil and things like that for some of the designs. But she has like a weird sparkly cape, and I just figured Merida is a very like no sparkly capes person.
there, I found
Like
it.
cloak maybe, but yeah. So but I actually am using silk satin because it's a gradient for that costume, and that's the first time I've ever worked with that material, and it is a pain in the butt. It's almost like liquid fabric. It
Hmm.
feels so cool, but it's so like floppy. It's just like it slides all over the place.
Oh gosh. What would you use to
I don't know if you can
stabilize
see in
that?
the picture. There's a couple of different techniques. I mean, for me, it was just like just paying attention to the seams and the places that I needed to sew. So using a lot of pins, and there's silk pins that you can use with silk that don't damage the fabric as much. And so I also I mean, a lot of times when you're working with chiffons and stuff like that, you can use water soluble stabilizer. So like if you put the water soluble stabilizer in water and then put your fabric in there and like swish it around and pull it out and dry, it'll get really stiff, and then you can work with it and then you can just rinse it out.
Oh,
and
wow.
it'll be fine. So as long as your fabric's fine with water, which most fabric is with just water, you can use that. It's a really good trick for chiffon chiffon. Or you can also use starch, or you can just spray with starch and to stiffen it. I know for me, I didn't do anything except just pay attention to like what parts I was working on and making sure I was pinning them. And a lot of times when I'm sewing with satins and things like that, you're constantly checking the bottom of your fabric, because with slippery fabrics, a lot of times as you're sewing, that bottom will slide up under there, and then you'll sew through a bunch, or worse, it'll start to pull away and you'll end up not sewing your seam. So it's kind of just like sewing a little bit and checking and sewing a little bit and checking.
I do that sometimes when I'm really lazy.
Yeah. It's coming out really pretty though, so I think it was worth it.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we're kind of wrapping up here soon. But if anyone else has any other questions, doesn't have to be, sewing tools related. We're happy to take them, before we wrap up.
Where can people reach you, Diana?
What's that?
What?
Where can people reach you?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Oh, you can reach me I have Royal Goldfish, or my Etsy store is Mikaria Drake, which is basically it's Mikaria Drake, which is like my parent company, and then Royal Goldfish Studios is under that. That's just my cosplay stuff. So you can find me on Facebook as Royal Goldfish, on Instagram as Royal Goldfish. You can email me at askroyalgoldfish@gmail.com.
Nice. And what social media?
I also have a website. I have a website at mikariadrake.com. So, and that has a whole gallery and all of my commission policies and all that stuff on it.
Can you spell that again?
Not something I've used. It's Mikaria, Mikaria Drake, Drake.
Okay, I think I'll throw it in the chat. Let me just make sure that this is correct. Oh, yep, there you are.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, here I'll throw it up in the.
Yeah. It has tutorials and stuff on it too. There's a couple of tutorials on there and other stuff. It's something that like I've been trying to switch. Eventually, I'll switch from my Etsy store to only that, but it's been difficult to do that. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know there's a lot of things going on with Etsy that people aren't really happy about.
Yeah, ever since they upped their fees, it's been hard for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, so I think we're all good, but let's just throw one more question out for everybody. I know, Sam, you probably answered it before. I've answered it before, but anyway, this is a new episode. So what is your favorite cosplay of all time, Diana?
Like that I've done?
Yeah. Like ever.
I'm like, I've done ever? I think it was Princess Daisy.
Oh,
which
okay.
I haven't even worn that a lot, but it was something that like I made because I was watching my son play like Smash Ultimate, and I was like, oh, I really love like Daisy's, like I love how they changed that design just enough where like it's a little bit more elaborate, and like I'm really into that. And everyone always does Princess Peach, and I was like, no, I'm like Daisy all the way. But it didn't occur to me that would be like a kid's cosplay, like a little girl's running up to you because you're a princess cosplay, and like I would expect that with Merida, but it was really cool because everywhere I went, like there were little girls that were all about like hugging and like, oh, it's Princess Daisy, and it just in my head it like didn't click. So like at the actual con, it was such a like nice surprise. and that was and it was also actually a pretty comfortable costume too.
It's nice to see the different reactions that you don't expect when you're actually in the costume. So that's a nice little surprise. Yeah. Sam, what about you?
It doesn't matter like whether it's comfortable or not.
Well, whatever your most favorite, for whatever reason. Well, I kind of know what mine is. My favorite one is my Momohime, and it has a lot of importance to me because it was the first costume that I made when I started getting back into cosplay. After my mom had passed away, and I was like, I'm never sewing ever again. So it was a huge turning point for me in cosplay. Made it all by myself, learned a bunch of different techniques. I hand painted the kimono sleeves, and I played that game like years ago. So it's from Muramasa the Demon Blade. If anybody's familiar with Vanillaware Studios, they made Odin Sphere and some other really cool stuff for the I was gonna say the Switch for the Wii. So and she's kind of like not a very popular character. I still got a lot of attention for it. I'm like, oh my god, I don't see many Momo Hime cosplayers. But that one, and then I wore it several times, and then eventually I made a sword because she carries that giant demon blade. So I eventually made the sword when I learned how to make swords, and so that costume has transcended a lot of skills for me. So that's why that's my favorite. I don't think I'll wear it again though because I'm kind of tired of it now. But it is my favorite. Sam, did you have time to think?
I have a lot of favorites, but one that for some reason keeps popping in my head right now is my Kratos from God of War. Just because I really liked walking around cons and looking at men and being like, boy.
It's very different. It's very different from what you usually cosplay. It's very serious.
I turn it very feminine, and I alter it because I want it to. Well, not very feminine, still Kratos. But the only thing that is tough for me to wear it right now is I need to build my biceps back up. I've always had larger biceps, girl. But if I'm gonna do Kratos again, I'm gonna go back to when I had the really big biceps because it's funny.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you looked great in that Kratos. So, and you've only worn it the one time.
That was real leather work too.
Yeah.
I went in and I hand stitched and I did a lot of crazy stuff to try and make it look because his looks like a patchwork of things. So.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah. You should wear it again at some point.
I have every intention to. I'm in the middle of my I restarted my workout regimen and I have more weights now, so.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining in to watch us. Thank you so much to our guest, our special guest, Royal Goldfish. Diana, don't forget you can find her website. I put it in the chat, MikariaDrake.com, and she's known as Royal Goldfish, Royal_Goldfish, right? At on Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, so thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Next week, Sam, talk about our next week episode.
So next week we have another guest. It's going to be Hagrid, and we're talking about Rule 63 cosplay, aka crossplay or gender bending, whichever you'd like to call it. And maybe I'll slip into Kratos. We'll see.
Ooh. All right. Well, thank you. You guys need to come in and watch that then to see if she actually does. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much, and have a nice night. Stay safe. Stay home. Bye.